Hello again, friends, and thank you for joining me for this, the fifth in my Introduction to Bourbon series. To just recap, I'm not going to go through each individual video, but what I've tried to do here is give an introduction to bourbon to folks who are probably whiskey enthusiasts, but not as experienced in terms of their exposure to bourbon, and to just help everybody understand the history of whiskey generally, bourbon specifically, some of the laws and regulations that come into play, and just to really get a landscape of what does bourbon look like today and what are some various kinds of bourbons that you might like to try in terms of getting exposure to the different styles and flavors and profiles and distilleries. So speaking of distilleries, we're going to be talking about one today that is near and dear to my heart, and that is the Wild Turkey Distillery. So this is another one like Four Roses that is having a renaissance after years of being relatively neglected by whiskey consumers. So if you ask people a generation or two back, what do you think about Wild Turkey? They would tell you Wild Turkey is whiskey for bikers and rock stars and the type of people you typically don't bring home to meet mom and dad. But recently people have rediscovered this distillery, and that is thanks to Jimmy Russell and his son Eddie Russell, current master distiller. So Jimmy Russell is an incredible story. He started sweeping floors at Wild Turkey in 1954, rose all the way up the ranks to be master distiller, and he celebrated his 65th anniversary with the distillery in the last couple of years. So his son Eddie is the current master distiller. He's the new kid on the block because he's only been there like 35 years, but combined they have almost 100 years of experience at Wild Turkey, and they have forgotten more about distilling than most distillers will ever know. They are the capital M, capital D master distillers of American whiskey currently. And we talked previously about how bourbon had gone through this period starting in the 60s where it was out of fashion and was a real race to the bottom in terms of just trying to produce it as cheaply as possible. And there was no sense of bourbon being a premium product, but that changed with Maker's Mark, and they started advertising that they were making more expensive bourbon. And it got people thinking about this in the context of maybe not being something for bikers or something you buy by the handle, but maybe being something that was crafted and deserves a little bit more care and a little bit more respect. So this happened in the late 80s and early 90s, and you had these master distillers, again, guys like Jimmy Russell or Booker No from the Jim Beam, or Elmer T. Lee from what is now Buffalo Trace, or Parker Beam from Heaven Hill. And they took on this role of sort of brand ambassador evangelists. So they used to travel around to spirits shows and to talk to folks in the trade and to try to convince people to take bourbon as seriously as they did single malt Scotch whiskey, for example. So that was a big change, and part of that change was the launch of all these premium brands, because again, if you're thinking about premium product, you associate it with a premium price tag. So you might be familiar with Blanton's, which came out in the mid 80s. You might be familiar with Booker's, which will be the subject of a future video. But one of these was Rare Breed, and this is my favorite of the Wild Turkey whiskeys in terms of just being something that I know I'll probably be able to find without too much effort and without too much expense, and it's going to be very, very good or excellent. And this was a whiskey that was launched in 1991, so a little bit later than its forebears, but this comes to us at barrel proof, and you can tell which batch is which by the proof. And again, we talked about people like to collect and assemble and compare the various codes from Four Roses single barrels, or you get different batches of various kinds of releases, and people like to trade those and see which is better and worse. And so we're lucky enough to have that information for Wild Turkey. And if you can find, like, for example, the 116.8 proof batch is one of the better ones in recent memory. Now this is a chill filtered whiskey, which is the source of some controversy. So that process makes it so that the whiskey doesn't go cloudy if it gets cold. But the downside is that it strips out the oils and some of the texture and flavor. And again, we're going to talk about Booker's in the next video, but Booker's is not chill filtered. So that's maybe an interesting point of comparison. You can keep that in mind and taste those side by side and see if you can taste that difference. If you haven't experienced these two styles in contrast to one another. But anyway, Rare Breed, like I said, is one of my favorites. If you told me I had to go into a liquor store and just grab a bottle, it would be Rare Breed. Always very good, sometimes excellent, and fairly priced. again, it's typically higher proof, in the high 50s ABV. So that's barrel proof, which again, whiskey geeks love. Anything that gets us closer to the experience of going into the rick house and tasting the stuff straight from the barrel. It's worth noting that Wild Turkey does not have a barrel proof single barrel expression, so you can get single barrels from them, Russell's Reserve single barrel, and you can get barrel proof whiskey from them in the form of rare breed, but you cannot get a single barrel proof whiskey from Wild Turkey. The only folks that have been able to bottle one of those are the Jewish whiskey company, also called Single Cask Nation, my dear friends Joshua Hatton and Jason Johnston Yellen. And if you haven't had any of their whiskey, I'd advise you to seek those guys out. They're good people, and they do excellent work. But again, even if you just want to go to the store and pick up a bunch of Wild Turkeys, and you could grab a 101, you could grab a Russell's Reserve, you could grab a rare breed, and you could grab a Russell's Reserve single barrel, and it would be a fascinating tasting to just say, okay, look, these all come from the same distillery, and there will be commonalities as a consequence of that, but there will also be differences, and there will also be things that you can pick out as being, okay, well, this is what a single barrel tastes like to me, or this is what barrel proof tastes like in comparison to 55%, in comparison to 50.5%, right, if you're drinking the 101. So again, so much of educating yourself about this stuff is it's reading, and it's also listening to numbskulls like me. But really, the best education is an applied one. Just go out and find a bunch of whiskey and taste it and try to pay attention and make some notes maybe. But have fun with it. It's meant to be fun. It's meant to be enjoyed. It's meant to be shared, most importantly. So make sure you have some friends around. And just think and talk about what you're tasting. And if you have the chance to do that, please let me know. I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on all this. So you can drop a comment in the comment section. You can DM me. You can I'm on the social media platforms. But really value this for the engagement. Really enjoy doing this with y'all. The attention, the patience is very much appreciated. So go find yourself some rare breed, and we'll see you next time to talk about Booker's age and bottling strength is going to be the topics for the next one of these. But again, just so thankful to y'all for paying some attention to me. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next time. Cheers.